2024 Tampa Bay Estuary Program Management Board meeting. Call to order, Maya.
Mr. Alashewski.
Present.
Ms. Bennington. Ms. Bernal Leon. Ms. Blanchard. Ms. Brown. Ms. Burks.
Present.
Mr. Cooley. Ms. Maloney for Dr. Day.
Here.
Mr. Fitzpatrick. Dr. Flewelling.
Here.
Mr. Blitzberg.
Present.
Ms. Hammer Levy.
Here.
Dr. Hershoren. Ms. Kessler.
Here.
Ms. Crawl.
Present.
Mr. Miller. Dr. Moyer. Ms. McClory for Ms. Powers.
Here.
Mr. Pratt.
Present.
Mr. Johnson for Mr. Freeman. Mr. Provenzano.
Here.
Ms. Sussingham. We have a forum.
Thank you. All right, Ed, changes to the agenda?
There are three changes to the changes were sent to you previously this week. It related to agenda item 4, the Tampa Bay Stormwater Controls Project, just kind of outlining the process for the management board meeting. To consider agenda item 8 relates to actual recommendations for Bay mini grant proposals from a review committee that was held after the packet went out. And at your places is an update to agenda item 5. It's our final fiscal year 2024 Q4 financials and final budget. You see a couple of extra invoices that were relevant to fiscal year 2024's close that are included in this updated.
Minutes from the August 9th management board meeting. We have a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved.
Do a second?
Second.
The tie. Whoever voice you heard first. Any additional discussion on the August 9th minutes? All those in favor of accepting those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We're at public comment. Are there any members of the general public who would like to speak? Hearing none, we'll move on to our action items. Number 4, Tampa Bay Regional Stormwater Controls Contractor Selection. Ed.
Yeah, this project is a result of a restore grant that we were awarded all the way back in December 2022, actually. We finally got a contract in place with DEP this past quarter. And as such, we solicited for contract services and engineering support to fully fulfill this grant that we received from DEP. Grants focused on identifying priority stormwater control projects in the Old Tampa Bay subwatershed, and then potentially implementing up to 3 projects that were identified in that evaluation process, as well as any relevant projects that are brought by members in the Tampa Bay watershed. And last but not least, if the Restore Council deems that first phases of that project to receive the additional funds, then we would receive additional funds to actually implement those stormwater projects that were ranked high as a priority. So over the course of July 19th through September 25th, we advertised an RFP for these services. We received actually 4 proposals. 3 were deemed responsive to the overall RFP. We held an evaluation committee on October 18th. We had 4 evaluation committee members, including one of my staff, attend. A couple of the management board members are also part of that evaluation committee. They scored the proposals based on the project team qualifications, the project approach, level of efficiency that was identified between the tasks and phases identified in the RFP, then performance considerations of past projects that were similar in nature to what was advertised. The extra program also provided some additional scores for whether or not the primary respondent was considered a minority, disadvantaged, or woman-owned business enterprise, and whether or not they were previously awarded work by the estuary program within the past couple of years. The evaluation committee went through the scoring process, and as a result of the scoring process and the ranks that were derived from each of the member scores, there were 2 firms that were basically came out with tied ranks of 1.75. I was Jones, Edmonds and Associates in Applied Sciences and those firms, based on the evaluation committee recommendations, were requested to make presentations at this meeting, at the management board meeting today. So you'll see their teams here on opposite sides of the room. They will each be given 20 minutes to present their overall proposal to the management board. From there, we'll open up the floor to any discussion. Any questions that you would have for either one of the respondents after both the presentations are made. Then from there, like I mentioned, the floor will be open for any motions and votes for a final order of negotiation that we would recommend to bring to the policy board for their final approval next Friday. If there's no motions presented or the votes kind of go back and forth and there's no decision made, then we also have the option to use Mentimeter to come up with an individual management board order of negotiation, and we'll use basically the average results of that Mentimeter poll to formulate the final recommendation, the management board that we put forth to the policy board's consideration next Friday. With that, I don't know if you all had any questions for me, but we had a time certain for the first presenter, Jones Edmond, at 9:10 to present their overall their overview of their proposal, and then that would be followed by Applied Science. Any questions before we start the presentations? Yes.
Can you briefly explain how the ranking process comes up with a different result with scoring?
Yeah, so we recognize that everyone scores a little bit differently. So we look at driving based on the individual evaluation member score or rank on those scores. So 1, 2, 3, based on their scores. And we average their rank within their scores to give you the values that are presented in the agenda item. As I mentioned, the average ranks were tied. There is some separation between the average scores of the respondents.
We rank the desks into an octagon rather than a.
They need spelling allowed.
So subtle.
Were you trying to see if we were awake?
Always count on Roger for humor. Questions? We'll bring up the first presentation. Bear with us just a second. One of the orient the screen so that it's presented. It should be good. And then you just press the arrow entry key or the. So I was trying to avoid. Oh, I gotta switch the screen. Sorry. Should be good now, right?
We're ready?
Ready.
Well, good morning. We appreciate the opportunity to present on this project that we know is very important to the future health of Old Tampa Bay. By way of quick introductions, I'm Brett Cunningham. I have the presentation team, Con Bupa, Ray Pribble, T. Doe, John Harvey, Tiffany Busby, Mike Harden, Steve Peen, and Scott Dietschy. And it's not advancing.
Try the right arrow.
I have
Enter button.
pressing the right arrow. Thank you. Before we get into the three topics, we wanted to talk briefly about phase one. So all three phases of this project are critical, but all three phases of this project are important, but phase one is the most critical phase of the project. Because if we don't have the right projects, the best projects selected, it won't matter. We just won't get as much good out of phases 2 and 3. So for your project goals, we've identified previously that you need about 180,000 pounds per year of total nitrogen reduction, and currently you have roughly $9 million for construction. So that tells us that we're looking for big projects. So projects that on the order of tens of thousands of pounds per year for nitrogen reduction. It also tells us we're looking for really cost-effective projects to get as much of this done as we can for the money that's available. So that's really going to be one of the drivers that will set the criteria in phase one. We also certainly anticipate for projects like this, these are going to be kind of atypical projects, that there's going to be a large variety in project type. Some are going to be capital intensive, some are going to be O&M intensive. So we certainly recommend that you use life cycle costing in this. That's really the only way to do the apples to oranges comparison. I led the FSA, the Florida Stormwater Association, recent effort to develop the life cycle costing tool, and Mike Harden was also on that. And part of our experience in developing that tool was doing projects like this. So we have you well covered. Obviously, total nitrogen is probably the most important, but there's going to be other things that we'll be looking at, maybe secondary factors that are going to be important in this, and we'll need to talk about how we weight those, how we evaluate those, and those are going to be really different from project to project, especially something like whether it affects freshwater inflows, those types of things. And then ultimately, what all of this says is you're not going to get there in a cost-effective manner with conventional treatment. These are going to be, we expect certainly the top-ranked projects to be pretty unique, pretty different type projects. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Con to start talking about the three topics.
Good morning, everyone. All right, I'm going to take this opportunity to highlight our wonderful team here and talk about our qualifications. And I'm excited to show you some examples of relevant projects and innovative tools that will really benefit Old Tampa Bay. We've assembled a highly qualified team. It's the right size project team to work together really efficiently, yet have plenty of resources to accomplish all of the tasks that you see there for this project. What you're going to get with this group is a team that has worked with the estuary program for a long time. Not only that, as you can see on the screen, this team has consistently worked together on many similar type projects throughout the state. So what does that mean to you? We're going to hit the ground running. We're going to work together efficiently. We're going to work with you efficiently. There's no learning curve. This is a team that's passionate and invested in Old Tampa Bay. Members of our team, through 30 years of working with the estuary program and the Nitrogen Management Consortium, have made key contributions to the Old Tampa Bay integrated model, as well as development of the Reasonable Assurance Plan. We've also developed the action plan database for Old Tampa Bay. Now, on top of that, we've been working with Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, Pasco counties, and municipalities, developing stormwater management plans and designs in and around Old Tampa Bay. So what you're ultimately getting with this team is a group of folks that have been working together for a very long time on these very types of projects and who are very familiar with the issues and drivers in Old Tampa Bay. In looking at our overall availability, you can see that even in the beginning of the project, we have more than adequate availability. As time progresses, of course, we can commit more resources as needed. We're excited to start working on this project with you. And when it comes to qualifications, I remember one of the comments of the selection committee was that our team was very qualified to do this project. This is a team that's developed award-winning water quality focused projects throughout the state. And we're going to show you some of examples of how we're going to use our understanding of this watershed and some of the innovative tools to really help with Old Tampa Bay.
Thanks, Con. Just real quick, since we've done so much of this work over the years. There are multiple sections of this first phase. The assessment comes first. We've done multiple surface water resource assessments throughout the Tampa Bay watershed as well as throughout the state, along with Jones Edmonds quite often as our prime. That effort includes lit review, data compilation, evaluation of status and trends, which we've done for many entities involved with the Tampa Bay Estuary Program throughout the years. The data sets that we have for Old Tampa Bay, we've been working with for more than 30 years. We've helped design some of the monitoring programs that our various partners in the Estuary Program utilized. We worked with DEP to help develop some of their evaluation code from the IWR database to test impairment. So we're very familiar with all the data sources that we could possibly use in Old Tampa Bay. We also have, we need them when we need them, a set of tools to evaluate what potential water quality modifications in the watershed mean for Old Tampa Bay itself, with respect to what we expect water quality to be, what we expect light availability to be, what we expect a potential seagrass restoration acreages to be. And leading into the next part of this phase one, which is selection of potential projects, as we've worked on the action plan database since the get-go. I found some code on one of my old machines from 1993 before the consortium was formed, leading into that work. And then we started out with the action plan databases, a set of Excel spreadsheets, which we spent a lot of time playing with even before Ed. You're not that old, Ed. So
In high school.
So that's a lead into our selection of projects that I was in the back of you, Con.
As Ray demonstrated, the first phase, knowing and understanding the Old Tampa Bay watershed is critical. The next step, of course, is to identify those projects that will give us the biggest bang, provide the most reduction in pollutant loads. And I'm going to describe just one of the innovative tools that we developed with regards to finding those pollutant loading hotspots. So NOAA has recently created an impervious data set for the entire state of Florida. We took a look at this data. It's very detailed. It's actually very good. So we developed a GIS tool to use this data along with the most current land uses and soils to come up with a very detailed pollutant loading model analysis. So what you're seeing on the screen here is an example of the total nitrogen hotspots in the Hillsborough River watershed. This is just an example. I see David Glicksberg there. You'll be happy to know that we've actually done this for the entire Hillsborough County. Kelly, Sarah, you're here too. We're actually working on this for Pinellas County as well. So that will provide a big benefit for this project. And we can easily do it for Pasco County as well. The beauty of this tool is that the methodology that we use is consistent with the approach that FDEP uses for development of their BMPs. So what this means to you is that the projects that we develop, design, and implement are going to get the appropriate credit from DEP.
Good morning. I'm Tiffany Busby with Wildwood Consulting, and I'm a certified facilitator. I think it's worth mentioning that our team's experience that Con already mentioned with working with local stakeholders on stormwater master planning and on constructing and building projects is really helpful because our team already has relationships with a lot of these local partners. But also my firm does bring some experience as well in terms of project listing and tracking. We manage the state's water quality restoration database for DEP. That comprises over 7,000 projects and involves over 400 entities, local governments, as well as other kinds of entities. Like that database gets updated on an annual basis, and we support that as their contractor. The second thing that I wanted to mention is that our whole team are big fans of the National Estuary Program and its culture, the consensus building process that program is based on. I'm a former NEP director myself, and when I started out down in the Charlotte Harbor area, Ed's predecessors, Dick Eckenrod and Holly Greening, really helped me in our process understand how important consensus building was to the overall process. And so our team is really committed to that. And then also I wanted to acknowledge that stakeholder engagement is really a relationship building process. And so that means that my firm is used to being very flexible with the staff, because oftentimes the staff have connections and partnerships or want certain activities or outreach to go through them versus through contractors. And so we've helped with a number of projects where our roles varied or it evolved over time. So we can be really flexible with the outreach part and working with the staff in terms of what, what they want their roles to be versus ours. And then finally, I just wanted to mention that us being brought in on the Jones Edmonds team overall to focus on stakeholder engagement just shows our overall commitment of the team to stakeholder engagement. So thank you.
When it comes to design and implementation, as Brett mentioned earlier, it's going to take more than the conventional treatment systems to really get us to where we want to be in Old Tampa Bay. With this team, we truly understand the watershed issues, and we can develop innovative solutions. And a great example of that is our Sweetwater Paynes Prairie project here. The primary objective of this project, one of them is similar to Old Tampa Bay, is the reduction of total nitrogen. We accomplished this by developing a wetland treatment system, as well as restoring over 1,300 acres of Paynes Prairie to its natural system, to its natural state. We've also added wildlife habitat and even provided recreation, outreach, and education opportunities for the public. So this project really checks all of the boxes. We did the assessment, we did the modeling, the design, the permitting, and also provided the construction support services. The post-construction monitoring of this project shows that this removes an impressive 124,000 pounds per year of total nitrogen. That's very impressive. And also of note is that we were able to secure over $5 million of grant funding. That's something we're very proud of. We have staff that are specialized in funding opportunities and applications. And I'm proud to say that 100% of Jones Edmonds stormwater quality improvement projects have been grant funded. And we're looking to provide that same level of service to you here.
Thank you, Scott. Well, as the EOR for the project, John Harvey, I live and breathe the details of these things. And I can't tell you how excited and proud I am to be a part of this team that I've gotten to know here to really get into the trenches and execute the details of plant production and deliverables for you all here. This type of project is very innovative and exciting. It's going to have a lot of challenges associated with it. It just gives us plenty of opportunity to work together and resolve these problems and communicate with you guys in a very open fashion in how the design is progressing. Very familiar with delivering the 30, 60, 90, 100% plans that we need to deliver to keep everyone communicated and apprised of things. We understand that cost is always an issue. That's something that's going to be first and foremost in each of our deliverable processes. And we're really looking forward to getting involved in the design and permitting process. Construction phase services may not have the bells and whistles of all the interesting things we've been talking about here today, but our team realizes the fact that the majority of the owner's cost, investment, and risk is associated in this phase of the project. We bring some very sophisticated and experienced design professionals into the project. We actually engage them well before this phase throughout the design process to make sure that we're getting all their input through constructability reviews and other components of the design. Obviously, as we get into the construction phases with pre-construction services, the bidding phases, construction oversight and implementation services and post-construction services, our team has got a documented history of acknowledging the cost of the project when we start the job and minimizing opportunities for the contractor to capture change orders throughout the process. So it's very open communication that our folks have. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Con and talk a little bit more about our scope.
Thank you. When it comes to understanding of the scope, I remember one of the comments from the selection committee was that of all the proposals, we provided the most detail when it comes to how we're going to conduct the project. This is because we thoroughly understand the scope. We as a team have been doing many similar type projects throughout the state. That's why we were able to provide a very detailed scope of services, specifying the tasks and subtasks, and even to the point of outlining the deliverables that you can expect throughout the project.
And to reinforce what Con just said in terms of our experience and what it means to this project that we did for St. Johns River Water Management District for the Indian River Lagoon, it was basically identical to your phase one. So what we're tasked to do for Old Tampa Bay, we did it for the entire Indian River Lagoon. That covered 5 counties, 2 water management districts, an estuary program, and all the cities. So, same process of really looking for big, move the needle type projects. How do we prioritize those? How do we rank those? Just the same thing that we're doing for this project.
Yeah, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about a project that we did here in Pinellas County called the Stark EM10 Stormwater Retrofit Project. This I think is a great example of kind of a typical project that we could see come out of this project. And so basically what it was is looking at a wetland mitigation area and providing some modifications to that so that we could get some additional water quality benefit. Now, because it was a mitigation area that required some additional coordination and monitoring and modeling to make sure that, the hydro period and everything remained the same, we didn't fundamentally change any of those characteristics. But that allowed us to do some upstream water quality improvement projects where we're holding back water to get some additional water quality benefits from that. Additionally, there was an adjacent road widening project that we were able to coordinate with and help get some additional water quality benefit from their project as well, and really make both of those projects work well together so that we can maximize the benefit for the county. I think that this project really demonstrates our ability to be able to, work with not only multiple regulatory agencies, but also multiple projects, where you might want to go in and look at existing projects and retrofitting them to maximize your water quality benefit.
Thanks, Mike. So in closing, we've demonstrated what you're getting with this team. We have a long history with Old Tampa Bay. Our familiarity with the projects, the opportunities are there, are going to allow us to hit the ground running. We have a strong history with understanding the impacts that those projects are going to have on the bay itself. So how is the bay going to respond? We have highly relevant project experience in terms of identifying projects that are tens or hundreds of thousands of pounds per year in nitrogen reduction and the other benefits that may come with them. We understand that each of those project opportunities is going to be unique. There may be a difference in nitrogen species. There may be a difference in whatever it may be. So we're going to tailor those concepts to whatever they need to be to give you something that's highly cost effective and that's going to get as much restoration as can be done with the money available. And then lastly, we've implemented all those. So we've come up with the ideas, but we've also designed them and seen them all the way through construction and help get grant funding for them. Thank you.
I'm gonna hold off questions, like I said, after the final.
All right, call up Applied Sciences team to make the next presentation. You all seen the correct screen?
Yes.
And you should just be able to use the arrows to.
Good morning.
we didn't plan it, but they had 9 people and we have 9 people. We really did not plan this. It just happened. So let me know when the clock starts and we can get going. All right, thank you, Mariam. So we're really excited about this project here today, the regional stormwater controls identification and implementation. When I saw this photo that we have up there, I thought that was a rendering, and I asked Brian where he got that. He said he took this picture. And this kind of summarizes what we're trying to do with this project. It's about the bay, it's about the community, it's about living and enjoying what we have. And this is what Estuary Program and this project is about. We kind of organized our presentation in a similar way, I guess, with all the tasks that you have up here, and we left out the construction. We can discuss it at the end. But the Estuary Program has done a lot of work through the years in terms of the science and the monitoring and the understanding of what's happening in Tampa Bay, including Old Tampa Bay. We're at the point right now where we need to actually start looking at what's coming into Tampa Bay. This is why we're looking at stormwater, we're looking at reducing nitrogen load by the 90 tons a year that we have a goal to, and it's coming from all these conveyances. And what's more important, it's not the fact that it's just coming from the conveyances, but it's the municipalities that we have. Starting from the right, going counterclockwise, we're talking about City of Tampa, Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, Pinellas Park, Largo, Dunedin, Oldsmar, Safety Harbor, and to some extent, City of St. Pete. And what's also important is that it's not a coordination effort only with these local municipalities and cities and counties, including DOT, but also it's going to be an effort coordinating within each one of these jurisdictions. We need to be talking to the stormwater folks, to the parks folks, to the roadway folks, to the utilities folks that are doing septic to sewer, that are doing all kinds of projects that might help us and all working together and achieving these goals. We've worked with a number of all these counties and cities actually, and we've always realized that this silos between the departments sometimes is harder to break, and we have managed to successfully work with most of them and do that. Just briefly about myself, I used to be on the management board at some point. When I worked with Hillsborough County, I contributed to the original CCMP. And since that time, I started Applied Sciences back in 2005. And we have delivered over 50 projects that are stormwater related that are not that much different than this one. With me here today is Brian Cook, who's going to be the deputy manager, and he's our director of urban design. We have Taylor, who spent most of his career at SwiftMud, and now he's working with us. He's our modeling and GIS guru. And not with us today is Christina, who's our director of engineering, and Nizar, who's our director of construction management. Also, you see on the bottom folks that have also spent most of their career in public government, like Mark Hammond, who was the swim director at some point before he became director of water resources at SwiftMud. Blake Guillory, who was the executive director for both SwiftMud and the South Florida Water Management District. Harry Downing, who at SwiftMud during his 30-year career wrote the book basically on guidelines specifications of how we do watershed management. Liz Brown, who worked with Hillsborough County, she's working with us right now on a septic to sewer project with the city and Hillsborough County using ARPA funds. Pete Owens, who's here today and who spent his career at EPC. We need to remember we have to permit through EPC any stormwater projects that we do. Joe Albers with the South Florida Water Management District. He's with Applied Sciences right now. He wrote the book on nutrient reduction with the Everglades. And finally, Bob Bronsky, he's been the EOR on 99% of the projects that are stormwater related, leaving Applied Sciences. Our sub-consultants is Kent Bulligold with half, I have to get used to that, Kent, half Singhofen. We got Chris with Kimberly Horn, Peppa with Scape, Ray with Stantec, and Dr. Ping with USF. These are all folks that we have ongoing working relationship with and we've worked with before and we've enjoyed working with. This is why we have them on the team. Very briefly also about Applied Sciences. You've heard about the triple bottom line of resiliency, community, and society. we kind of formulated the company when we started on that, and we've been focused on working with cities and counties. We don't do any public work, any private work with developers or any similar work. And that has really resulted in us delivering similar projects to this one throughout dozens of similar projects throughout the Tampa Bay region, and also throughout the state. The majority of all these projects that we talked about follow this path that you see here. Data collection, planning, and then we vet them to make sure they work from the master plans. Then we go to design, bidding, construction, and let's not ever forget about operation and maintenance. We have worked with every single one of those elements with our municipalities, and this project is following this path. We've done a lot of the data collection. The estuary program has, a lot of the science has been done. We also have a lot of this information, the inventory information, the data, the background data from working with the cities and counties throughout the region. And that's going to come in very handy in hitting the ground running. We've done dozens of master planning work in the Tampa Bay area and other areas. I've highlighted a couple of them here that are kind of water quality centric. One of them is, for example, the 2D modeling for Lake Eva, Lake Henry, where we're trying to get those two lakes to equalize to meet TMDL goals. But more importantly, for the Tampa Bay area, we already worked with the city of Tampa on their gap analysis, and right now we're the program manager for their watershed planning citywide. We're also working with Hillsborough County on water model migration, the SWIM 5 migration, also that is countywide. Taylor has come up with scripts to actually use costs and benefits to come up with priorities for decision making. We're going to be looking at a lot of concepts. We're going to be looking at a lot of models. You need tools to actually make those decisions. We're going to be able to give you those tools and put numbers on them and rank them for you. Drilling down a little bit on the master planning level, Lower Peninsula also discharges to Old Tampa Bay. We did that work for the city of Tampa. We also did the sea level rise analysis for the Lower Peninsula. Right now, we're really glad to see one of the projects that we called out, which is the McDill 48 being built. It's a water quality project that's also a park, and it looks really nice. It's almost done. When you get a chance, you can go by and look at it. Our partner, Half Singhofen, they already modeled the majority of Pinellas County. They created the countywide stormwater H&H model and flood forecasting tool, which will also come in handy for this effort. Applied Sciences also created the spatial tool for estimating pollutants for Hillsborough County. We did that for the entire county, and it's applicable in all the watersheds. In this case, we're looking at Delaney Creek, one of the first creeks that I worked on when I was in Hillsborough County back in the 90s, and it's still one of the most polluted. You can see some of the hot spots that the tool shows you. And we've taken that tool and we've used it in other places in the Everglades, for example. This is the feeder canal where we did, where the only goal of this project was to reduce nutrient flows to Lake Okeechobee. Some other projects that our sub-consultants are working on is the Old Tampa Bay assimilative capacity. This is what StatTech is working on. Their knowledge and information there will come in handy. We're working with Dr. Ping with USF. He's looking at the Benty Davis Beach protection study as part of the City of Tampa vulnerability assessment, which also, by the way, discharges to Old Tampa Bay. You asked us to look at 20 concepts. And those concepts are going to be used to make decisions of whether we're going to move forward on that continuum of these projects or not, whether they're going to be cost effective, whether they're going to give you the level of nutrient removal that you need. So what we have done is working with a number of our clients in the past, we have done exactly that. We've given them the tools to decide if these projects should go to design. This is one of them. This is in Rocky Creek, which is part of the Northwest 5, which also discharges to Old Tampa Bay. And the information that we provided to our client in this case is history on the flooding, problem definition, plats, utilities, easements. Can we get it done? Can we not get it done? Do we have to deal with a lot of utilities, soils information? We also look at the history. How did we get here? Should this have been, was this a wetland that was filled at one point? Should we be fixing this? Should we not be fixing this? And that helps us come up and gauge what kind of solutions should be
should be presented, and are they going to be permittable, or can we move forward with that? And this is what you see in this example, where we gave them what the concepts are, and the costs and the benefits from these concepts. Taking it a step further for short acres, for example, Taylor did the script to actually take the BCA spreadsheet that SwiftMud uses, and we put it in a GIS script to actually give us benefits, costs, damages, and what damages are going to be not present anymore, so to speak, if we can get that project done, so to put the value in it. And also this is going to become very, very handy. Let's not forget about septic to sewer. I mentioned it earlier. Kimberly Horn is working on a couple of projects in Pinellas County for septic to sewer. The nitrogen loading from that is also substantial, as we know, and we can talk more about that. Also, in that vein, we can talk about potentially looking at wells to actually put that in the toolbox in terms of, is it something that might be feasible? Because the best form of nutrient reduction is total removal of volume. Other toolboxes, other tools in the box that we have that are technology centric are our work with Manatee County on the AOS systems, the automated outfall structures. We showed that they have, that they can actually increase the residence time on some of their ponds by implementing that and actually operating it. And they're getting a lot of that permitted right now through SwiftMud. Other work done with folks with the National Trust, for example, they also confirmed that some of those nitrogen removal efficiencies that we found through our work. We work with Resilient Tampa Bay and Oldsmar. These are some of the sketches that we have. Worked with Pinellas County on their green infrastructure templates, and some of these templates were also used by other municipalities. And we have some regional projects. This one, for example, is in Largo, where we took the volume that was being discharged for water quality, and we did stormwater reuse. So this was the first stormwater reuse project to be permitted by SwiftMud. There's no more water volume or water quality discharge to Boca Ciega Bay because of this. We're taking the flow and we're using it for irrigation. Connor Park, also another project where we use FlexiPave, which is done right here in Pinellas Park, and other LID elements into it. And this one also award-winning, just like Largo. And when we want to talk about concrete, we have concrete as well. This is the biggest baffle box that was permitted by SwiftMud, and it was also grant funded. And all the projects that I mentioned before, by the way, were all grant funded as well. And I worked with Stantec and Ray here on permitting of this 46 wetland impacts in Northwest Hillsborough County. And we worked with Hillsborough County also at the time where they had Citrus Park Drive extension that was hung up in permitting. We did some swaps and get that permit going. And we did emergency management permitting for Brushy Creek with Hillsborough County a few years ago. We do construction management on the biggest reservoir in the United States right now. It's 16 square miles, which is about twice the size of Temple Terrace. And here's a list of some of the projects that we did. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian to tell us how we're going to be implementing these projects. Brian?
I think with that last slide, one thing is the importance of how these projects integrate into neighborhoods and the people part of implementation. So we're very adept. You can see all the different meetings, right? Workshops, stakeholder groups. This is all part of our working process in terms of getting things to implementation. We don't want things to get hung up in that planning phase and kind of die on the vine, right? It takes the agreement and collaboration with all these different kinds of people to move the projects down into implementation. So that's something really important to us and that we perform as part of our own operations. So Eli's gone through a lot of qualifications. I did want to share, or as a team, I think we have a few projects we wanted to share. Just some project examples of how this process may work. So for example, this is a grant funded project. We're working with USF, City of Tampa, a little bit with TVP, but we're looking at the Hillsborough River and the utilization of some kind of green infrastructure techniques to reduce nitrogen nutrient load into the river. And so as we look at these, the first one I'll talk about is at the River Tower site. Part of the process is to look at where that water is coming from. So we look at the urban situation. This is a stormwater inventory. You're seeing the contributing area and how that all focuses and funnels down to pretty much a single discharge point at the river on the south end there. And being able to identify, like work through the system and identify these nexus points, concentration points is really important to then being able to treat those areas and make large substantial impacts. So then the next step is along that path of water, where can we work? And so this is a slide just showing, we do property ownership analysis, looking at who owns what properties, including what cities the properties the city owns. And in this situation, it led us to this site where we're looking at old drive-in movie theater site. It's a big flat expanse, not used for much, but on the river. And so we looked at how the stormwater system is moving in and through around this area. Also what the contributing volume of water, what water is moving through or near the site. But in this situation, we thought, well, what if we can divert some of that water and move it into a renovated park space for the city and for the neighborhood. And so if you look at the bottom section, it kind of shows you like this is a big flat site, and the idea is to excavate some and to create a new sort of wetland environment that would be able to accept that stormwater coming from the contributing area. And that ultimately, well, it could become a park. And we've actually had meetings with the neighborhood, and they've actually been very interested in creating more habitat, more landscape space for their neighborhood as part of their park experience and amenity. And then while we're doing that, we're working all together. This is just the last week, right? We come up with these sketches and designs. I pass them over to Taylor. Taylor burns them into a digital elevation model, and we're immediately able to do takeoffs and look at how much nitrogen, how much phosphorus is being removed, what's the volumes of water we can store. And so we're working collaboratively and interdisciplinary to understand how our projects will work and be shaped to move towards a more finalized design. And then it becomes something like this, where we have a kind of renovated park space with these kind of stormwater accepting capture area as an amenity for the community. So similarly at Rowlett Park, we're looking at this big trunk line, a giant culvert coming through the space of that park and being directly discharged to the Hillsborough River. So through the analysis, right, this kind of finding sites part of the project, we found where topography meets the culvert system, and there's an opportunity to daylight that. And so then creating a new kind of sediment or detention space that water would be deposited instead of going directly into the river, and then going into that, and then into sort of a creek system, then diverted into the water. So a couple more projects from PIPA Escape, who we've been working with lately. We worked at Eckerd College recently and have had really great experiences. So go ahead.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, I may be the new member of the team here, but I work with Brian and Illy. And our role here is really going to be to translate these concepts and performance criteria into real actionable projects that are going to provide those benefits, but integrate into the natural or built fabric of the city. And it helps that this is a process that we've been part of and embedded in many places over the country before, including other side of the state in Jacksonville, in the McCoy and Hogan Creeks watershed, where we've actually been working with HAF on a similar project to identify and prioritize projects based on their ability to improve water quality impairment and flood severity, but also factors of providing recreational amenities and addressing social vulnerability factors. And through a similar process, have really identified priority impairment areas that pair with clusters of projects and develop conceptual designs, green or gray, that meet those collective benefits. But what's really exciting about the work that we've been embedded in is to be able to take those concepts, translate them into actionable designs, and move those forward through the processes that we've talked about. One of those being the re-envisioning and remaking of the McCoy's Creek stream corridor in Jacksonville, a impaired waterway channelized cutting through a pretty disadvantaged neighborhood that was really plagued by chronic flooding, and re-envisioning that corridor to maximize flood storage, to create hydrologic and habitat restoration and really provide a network of recreational benefits, including a city downtown trail network. And you can kind of see this restored amenity right in the heart of Jacksonville. And that's just one example. This is an approach that we take throughout. And I think what we will bring and this whole team will bring is, again, taking that analysis, optimizing it for the water quality improvements, the other benefits you identify, but really implementing this into the fabric of the communities that we're working in, and carrying it forward to create really combining performative placemaking with that performative water quality improvements you're looking for.
Thank you, Peppa. So every project that we have has to follow our quality control manual, and it all follows the 5 Cs that we have. And as you see here, we're doing this project, we're proposing to do this project in 19 months, which we heard in the deliberation, that's going to be the lowest schedule. And this has to do with our availability. So time is of the essence, and we're out of time. And we have funding right now. Let's get this project done. Thank you very much.
Yeah, at this time, we're gonna open up the floor for discussion, and if the management board has any questions, either one of the respondents. You can tell.
Like, if you do have a question to ask, please specify which firm you're
Yeah.
asking that of, and then we'll ask that firm.
I think you can tell from both presentations, they're highly qualified firms and have worked on projects that are of interest to this project. So I mentioned, we'd like to open up the floor for any discussion, the management board. If you did have specific questions, please direct them at a particular respondent, and we can call them up to the room as well. Not everyone else.
So I have a question. I know Applied Sciences mentioned the schedule. Jones Edmonds, that's your schedule for completing the project.
So this is the question for Jones Edmonds to go over the schedule that they're proposing for their project. Would someone like to come up to the podium and respond?
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, we did provide a schedule in there. The majority of the project will be done within 2 years. We don't know what projects that will be set for design yet, so it's really up for grabs. We wanted to be sure that we're realistic, capture time for every stakeholder to have a chance to review and input. And we know it takes time also to get the public buy-in. So we've considered all of that in our schedule, but most of the work will be done within the 2 years, and we'll work with you and the grant application and then administration to really get them what they need. But our priority, of course, is to make sure that everyone has consensus and everyone has buy-in on the project, on whatever projects that we come up with. So.
Thank you both for the presentations. As Ed mentioned, the teams are very well qualified. I guess my question is for both of you. Both mentioned some tools that you'll be able to utilize that you've got. I think Jones Edmonds, you mentioned the GIS tool. If you could provide a little more information or detail about how that works. Sure.
Part of the fun stuff that I do.
There's a lot of math in the background. I will say that. You know how DEP's method for developing BMPs, calculating the loads and such. There's certain calculations, the amount of impervious really makes a big difference. So we've incorporated that from actual data into our GIS-based tool, and using the same formula as what's in the basis of design in the DEP manual. We've undergone that approach to make sure that whatever projects that we overlay on top of our tool will undergo the exact same calculation. So when we calculate the benefits, it's going to be the same benefits that we provide to DEP and get the same credit.
So, for the watershed, we have this group actually worked, using the Tampa Bay watershed model, IMTB, as part of the old Tampa Bay, modeling study that we put together, this is more than 10 years ago now, right at 10 years ago. We've actually tried to update that model. It's a very data intensive. Tampa Bay Water is working on getting it updated through, I think, 2020 right now, but it's a multi-year process. In the meantime, we have the Tampa Bay Estuary Program's loading model that we helped develop since the 90s. And we use every 5-year period to estimate loads to Tampa Bay from the watershed. That can be used with accounting for changes in loads with respect to whatever projects may be implemented. Jones Edmonds also developed a simple model, which they've used in various watersheds around, including down Sarasota County, over on the East Coast, which can also do a similar accounting of loads from the watershed and how those loads might change given implementation of a project. Downstream of that, we have the old Tampa Bay model in the bay itself, which we can use to evaluate what those changes in loadings might mean to water quality in the bay and further downstream what that means for seagrasses in the bay, just like we did with a couple of projects that we evaluated as part of the old Tampa Bay study back in 2012, 2013. One of those projects was shutting off Lake Tarpon. See what happens. We also have a project where we shut down all point source surface water loads, which is kind of foreshadowing SB 64 coming down the line. Will have to be accounted for when we're talking about nutrient load reductions, how each of the wastewater treatment plants discharging to old Tampa Bay will be meeting, and what their plans are for meeting that 2032 deadline of no surface water discharges. That will have to be accounted for. We're looking at load reductions to old Tampa Bay. In addition to those models, we also have the old, not old, but developed a while ago by James Martin, the old WASP model that Gerald Morrison has been helping working with James to update through a current period and seeing how that is working in current time period, especially in old Tampa Bay with respect to blooms and what's water incoming loads mean to water quality. So those are some of the tools that we have that we can use to get an idea of what these projects, implementation of a certain project might mean both in the watershed and in old Tampa Bay itself. And none of those projects will be used in the vacuum. Ideally, use a couple of tools to evaluate any given project, if that project was selected as being important, and see if we get similar results, kind of provide us with the weight of evidence approach, which we've been doing for years for project with the Estuary Program. So the good division.
So that was me. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Right. So I think the question was about tools, not about models. And if you want to hear about models too, we can, I mean, a lot of the models that were mentioned, we're using them as well. I haven't heard WASP in a long time. And Gerald Morrison, actually WASP and Gerald Morrison and I used it a long time ago on placement of the sites. And so we have a long history with using a lot of the models that are available for everybody. But what we're really proud of are those special scripting tools that we've done that are available to our clients. For example, the Hillsborough County STEP tool that we did, which is for load estimation, that we made that available to the county. We gave them the key, we gave them the code, and they can go in there and change it and do whatever they need to do with it and use it countywide, for example. In the case of Taylor here and what the scripting that he does, I'm gonna let him actually describe to us what he does because I'll mess it up.
Thanks, David.
And yeah, coming back to the STEP tool, it's really about gathering those input data sets, like we talked about land use coverages. And maybe more importantly, that a lot of this area has been studied and there are basin delineations at that model scale that we can use. So each one of those basins, we can then intersect with the land use as well as, you know, you get like runoff coefficients from those as well. So we get basically loading through the runoff coefficients and then concentrations to those event mean concentration values based on that land use. And that's where those hotspot analysis tool, you know, images come in. So in addition to that, we can also, you know, look at the landscape and say, you know, these two basins are treated currently by some EMP, maybe like a dry retention pond or a wet retention system or something like that. So those are, you know, a lot of that is just kind of GIS processing, taking those input data sets, you know, pressing the button, crunching the numbers and getting those outputs. And I think a lot of stuff that I've learned working with applied sciences and particularly Brian is to then, you know, not really focus on like the tool kind of gets us there. We press the button, we do the input analysis and stuff like that, but actually looking at those outputs and being able to, you know, approach those situations from, you know, what now? What are the things that we can do that maybe the computer can't do or the computer doesn't really know that's going on, that we can then really leverage those tools to get us at a place of real understanding of things. Some other tools that we talk about, you know, we talk about those AOS structures, you know, having not just this kind of inert pond that's sitting there, but something that has more dynamic, more technological control, you know, to lower that water level before storm, be able to retain more stormwater runoff and really elevate the performance of that pond without really doing anything else. You know, what about all these retrofits that we could implement that already exist as ponds that now can be more intelligent and more able to respond to the conditions that are actually happening on the world. But the tools and things are things that I really enjoy doing. You know, we capture the whole benefit cost analysis of the district, as well as other entities like FEMA, you know, kind of tell us to evaluate, you know, pre and post condition projects. Mostly that's from a flood protection standpoint, where roads and buildings have certain costs of flooding. And then when we implement a project, those costs are down. And so we can show benefit cost analysis for that. You can imagine implementing something very similar for, instead of flood costs, we could say what are quality costs? What does it cost to have a certain pounds per nitrogen per acre removed per acre? So that would be the benefits related to construction costs.
So similar to Taylor, you know, developing specialized tools for what we do has been something that we've done for decades. You know, these include GIS-based tools that automate benefit cost analyses that are critical for, you know, identifying grant-funded projects to automating nutrient loading for, you know, large systems like we're looking at here. These are all tools that we, you know, utilize and share with one another. Also, we work very closely with, you know, our firm's done with Pete Sainhoffman as he's advanced real-time flood forecasting, but more relevant here is the work that he's done in real-time nutrient load forecasting as well.
And just to add to what Taylor and Frank mentioned, a couple of things that came up. One, a tool is exactly that. It's just as good as it is when the hands of the person that is using it. We do a lot of peer review, we do a lot of technical review, and we've seen sometimes tools used by non-scientists or non-engineers that were putting things in and things were getting out, and it was not really the proper use of the tool. So that's very important to actually keep in mind. And the second thing also related to something that Taylor brought up is a lot of the projects that we're going to be talking about are going to be extension of existing projects that are either proposed by the city, proposed by county, or flood protection, that we're going to work with them to either expand that pond or expand that element to actually provide additional nitrogen reduction more than they were expecting, rather than just going in there and looking at spending money to buy real estate and do that nitrogen reduction in that moment. It could be done that way, but it would be the expensive way to do it. Using synergies of projects that are already out there would help us save time and save money.
This for both firms, you both described pretty robust approaches to kind of work through project options and make recommendations on how we can best spend money to get the desired nutrient reduction outcomes. You both presented a number of projects that could you maybe speak to some of the project examples that you've presented, and are they delivering the benefits that they were promised? I'd be very interested in hearing if you missed, what have you gone back to do, working with your other clients to pivot or, you know, maybe improve the project, after the fact, make sure that it's delivering the benefits, that your studies promised.
Yeah, applied science, I guess respond.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, sorry. Yes, so a couple of projects that we mentioned, one of them was Connor Park, which
Doesn't like you over there for some reason.
Bermuda Triangle. So Connell Park is one of those examples that where it used to be a brownfield. So we got EPA money to actually clean up the brownfield. We got SWIFMUD money to take that lot that was already owned by the city, which was brownfield, and to turn it into a park. So we got stormwater money from SWIFMUD to make it a stormwater pond specifically for water quality improvements before discharge to the Manatee River. That project is built and is functioning. And as you saw, we did not stop at just making it a pond, which we could have. The city found other money to actually make it a park. We made sure it's an educational park. We used flexi-pave, we used pervious pavers, we used pavers for parking, but also pervious. The paver itself is not pervious, but the openings between the pavers are pervious. And we used oyster reefs, reef balls, as a demonstration of what we want to do. We use that for energy dissipation at the outfall, and we put some of them in the river itself. And right now, we expanded on that project. We got some more money with the Resilient Florida program, and the whole Palmetto Bay has dozens of reef balls in them, and we're doing the modeling right now for both water quality and for seagrasses.
Yeah, and just to clarify for both, I'm really interested in hearing, do you have the data now post-project to show that you're delivering the load reductions that the project design promised?
So one of the other projects is the Largo project, which we did stormwater reuse, and that one, there was no more flow out of it whatsoever, right? So that one we know 100% volume, boom, gone. So we know that one is delivering on it. And then the other project that is being monitored right now, and we're getting some nice data on is the feeder canal that we mentioned in South Florida. And what was the other project that we showed? There was another project that we showed, Connor Park.
Reservoirs.
What's that?
The big reservoirs at the south.
A nutrient box?
Oh, the nutrient boxes, yes. But see, what happens is that monitoring after the fact is expensive. So we use a lot of presumptive criteria when we're doing the permitting. And usually when we're getting money from SWIFMUD and all these agencies, they usually just to build the project, the big baffle box that we did. We know we have theoretical criteria of what baffle boxes do, but the city didn't have the money to actually do all the monitoring before that.
It's definitely something we recommend.
There's funds for it.
Not always up.
So to answer your question directly, the one of the projects that we presented, the Sweetwater project, you may have noticed when Con presented, he said 124,000 pounds per year nitrogen reduction, and the slide said 100. He said 124, and the slide said 140. That's because when we designed it, we had predicted we were going to get 124,000 pounds per year. When we actually monitored it, we were getting 140,000 pounds per year. So in that case, we didn't have to tweak it. It ended up working better than expected. We have a couple other recent examples that we did for the Mosquito Lagoon Reasonable Assurance Plan. They were pretty similar tech projects where we're using BAM. Both of those were monitored. One of them was almost spot on in terms of the nitrogen we were getting. The other one was about 10% lower than what we had anticipated. So we're making some adjustments in terms of how we apply to the kind of the treatment field to see if that makes a difference, and we're continuing to monitor that. So those are just a couple examples.
Yeah, and Ely's right. It's a lot of times it's hard to find, folks that are willing to pay for monitoring. It's not cheap. We do a lot of monitoring though for our clients throughout Florida. We have a whole suite of auto samplers that we use. We go out there. I mean, we've monitored baffle boxes, we've monitored tree box inlets, we've monitored upflow filters, we've monitored modular wetland units. And so some of those we found, we've gone out, we monitor, and they do exactly what we expect them to do. Sometimes they perform a little bit more, sometimes they perform a little bit less. One of the issues that you deal with when you're talking about particularly media-based systems is loading from stormwater tends to be intermittent. Right? It's not a constant load. Like a wastewater plant, you have everything's coming in continuously. That load is very consistent and you know what it is. With stormwater, that's not the case. You go through extended periods of drought where, your media can essentially dry up. And then what happens in those instances is the bacteria that's actually doing the work for those die. Right? Those communities go away. And when it rains again, you have to wait for that to get reestablished. That's called ripening. Right? And so one of the things we actually were doing some monitoring for Orange County where we're looking at some media-based systems that weren't quite performing. And so we went back after, and actually it was somebody else's design, but they asked us to come monitor it. And so we did. And one of our recommendations coming from that was, well, why don't we add a pump to this downstream pond and pump that back up into these media systems so that we're able to keep them wet and to keep that bacteria fed. And so we're about to move through, or we're about to begin, year 2 monitoring of these systems. And we're going to see how those retrofits and how those changes are working to enhance, the treatment of those systems. We anticipate to get some good results from that because we're going to keep that bacterial community alive. But having that understanding of how these systems work and what are the removal mechanisms and what are the processes that are taking place gives us a unique perspective to understand what are the best way to set up and design these BMPs so that we're able to get the maximum performance out of them that we can. And that's frankly the experience that we bring to the table. Yeah.
This is actually Brad. So Jones Edmonds said that they have a experience working with projects with the estuary program already. Does Applied Sciences and what's the estuary program's experience with these two companies?
I think we have experience with both some of their team members in both project teams that have been assembled. So I think we've had very good relationships with both their team members on different projects. I think Brian mentioned they're currently working on Copper River, some park areas there, and we've been involved with some of the discussions and central planning there. They also present some of their team is developing the Old Tampa Bay, some of the capacity assessment through Stanpack. And likewise, on the other side, work with Jones Edmonds as well as ESA, well, the other team members there on some of the modeling work, the nitrogen management consortium work in the past, and I think they both provide excellent service to our programs. That's why it's a tough decision to know.
Well, and so the budget's the same, like you have X dollars to spend.
Yeah, this is a CCNA, so costs are not considered. We have available grant funds, but that would be the sort of the next phase of negotiating the contract in order of negotiation that we come up with through this.
So I guess, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, if things are pretty equal across the board, you have scores to go to. It's like, I don't see one thing weighting one over the other.
Yeah, with the discussion we had at the valuation committee meeting, based on the scores and ranks, would have been my recommendation to present it in the order that it's presented. The evaluation team wanted to hear presentations from both the closely ranked respondents at this meeting. That's why we're holding this today. And, reserving the right of making my recommendation. We're going through this process now with the management board to come up with that final order.
No, I understand that, but like I'm not hearing anything today that pushes me in one direction.
So I can be totally wrong here. Wouldn't be the first. I heard, I think, two very different approaches on from the project delivery side of it. I heard Jones Edmonds more focus on more of a large, almost a regional type facility to try to maximize load reductions to the bay. I heard Applied Sciences team talk about more incremental retrofitting of existing, maximizing benefits of properties we already have, doing good more. So in the, in the RFP, part of that is, part of what was to be considered was the cost effectiveness, of the approaches, to all the jurisdictions who will ultimately be, straddled with the cost of these things, right? We're gonna be the ones to, Metro program's not gonna get an NPDS permit and start doing this, right? Maintenance and all that. So, and then there's the cost benefit matrix to those approaches. So question to both sides, why do you believe your approach is both the most cost effective and provides the highest benefit? I don't care who goes first. Well, since they went first last time, I'll make you're punished. And again, if I'm wrong, please just clarify.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. So we think they're most cost effective really because of the decades of experience. I mean, we've done projects from very tiny retrofits all the way up to regional, lots of big regional projects. And one of the things that we have learned is you just get economies of scale with the big regional projects that aren't achievable with the small projects. And that doesn't mean that the small projects aren't worth doing and shouldn't be done at some point. But if you're really looking for what's going to move the needle at the lowest cost, it's going to be those big projects. It's going to be an often kind of different type projects. That's really where you're going to achieve cost effectiveness. And I would even say that the cost effectiveness between the big regional projects and something really small can be 2 orders of magnitude in terms of dollars per pounds per year of nitrogen reduction. And then the other thing you kind of touch on, allude to, is it's not all just about the construction costs. You're going to be saddled with operation and maintenance, repair and replacement, all those things. And that's why we're such an advocate of life cycle costing. You're going to probably have a mix of projects where you're going to have some that don't have a lot of that, and you're going to have some where you have a lot of that. And you really need to understand that to truly know what's going to be your least cost approach.
We have just been through 2 major events. We don't want to call them extreme events anymore because we believe they're going to be regular events. There's going to be a lot of funds available for flood protection and stormwater management, would be my guess. There are already some that are on the books. Case in point, if anybody saw the City of Tampa City Council meeting yesterday with Parkland Estates. 6 months ago or a year ago, Parkland Estates was, most of the folks were against the project. It was a flood reduction project. It was a project aimed at with grants, with money coming from the state, from different agencies. And they were against this for various reasons. I'm not gonna talk about the merits or other ones. And the politics were also against it. Yesterday, it was a different story. It was not a problem-free story, but it was a different story where you had a lot of people that were initially for the project and now that were not outspoken, now they are actually for the project. The point that I'm trying to make is that it's not either or major projects or smaller projects. However, right now on the books, there are a number of flood control projects in Pasco, in Hillsborough, in Pinellas, in Largo, in other places that are already on the books for flood protection. If there's a way where we can work with these jurisdictions and give them a carrot to actually expand some of those projects that they already have without needing more real estate, without needing more, new permitting. To us, this is a low-hanging fruit that we should look at and we should not ignore. Regional projects are good. We've worked on a lot of regional projects. The Eagle Reservoir that we're doing in South Florida, that's the biggest reservoir ever. There's nothing wrong with regional projects. They are real estate intensive and they are expensive. And if we are looking at 90 tons a year, that's a lot of regional projects. So we need to look at everything that we have and not ignore one from the other.
Oh, can I add one thing? In working on these projects, these small flood control projects, you go into a neighborhood and for years, this place has been flooding for 10 years. It takes another 8 to 10 years for the county to finally decide to implement a project and then construct it. So the time between that is so long. There has to be a way to efficiencyize that, like Elise says, to speed these things up to the point where we can, and economize it. Because land in Pinellas County is so expensive. There's not a lot of places for gigantic projects there, but thousands of small ones will help. But my point was the time it takes for the projects to finally get constructed is a long, long time.
And one of the projects, thank you for reminding me, one of the projects that Pete, Ray, and I worked on with Hillsborough County was the pipeline that was going to the Northwest Treatment. And that was going through an area where the county had a project, a roadway project, right? So one of them was in the roadway department, the other one was in utilities. And the roadway project was hung up in permitting for a very long. We worked
8 years.
We worked with the roadway people, with the utilities folks, and we're actually swapping land to get the permitting going for both. And they both move forward and they both are built right now. So this is what we mean when we talk about synergies.
Questions? Do you wanna, I guess the next question, Ed had offered up, Mentimeter or,
Yeah, if it's the prerogative of the management board, we could put up a Mentimeter or you could navigate to and put your order in, and then we'll take the average of the management board pulling to forward that recommendation to.
or,
Before you get to that, you could call a motion if anyone would like to make a motion, ranking the 2 teams, 3 teams. And if there's a second, then you can vote on that.
and Ed, you had you had a recommendation as well, so I guess we do need to acknowledge that and discuss
And
that.
if nobody chooses to make a motion or if the motion passes, then you would go to the individual ranking.
I believe, Ed, and you, again, correct me if I'm wrong, your original recommendation was that,
The discussion at the evaluation team meeting was, I would present the order as presented as the scores and ranks. The evaluation team did not consider that as a recommendation they wanted me to put forth at the management. So that's why they called for the presentations.
so, would anybody like to make a motion? and presenting today.
What do
What do we make? What's the motion?
So, well, there are three components. I don't know if we have to handle these separately. Recommended. No, you have to put in order to defer. That's part A. So I think that the way that they're currently priced is.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept the respondent's order as presented in the agenda item. That would have Jones Edmonds and Associates as the first ranked. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All of those in favor of this motion, raise your hand because I'm gonna have to count. Aye.
Any on the Zoom that are, yeah, Chris Pratt is.
There's no votes coming in from Zoom.
Chris Pratt has his hand raised.
Chris, did you want to say something or are you voting in affirmative of the motion?
I'm voting affirmative of the motion. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And those opposed? Those abstaining? Some who did vote, I think. You're abstaining. One abstention.
That vote.
All right. Let's have it, so.
That motion was for the three recommended actions with A, including the order that is depicted in the agenda items.
Item. We need to go to B and C.
That's what I was trying to clarify.
And your motion was for all three at once with the order as Jones Edmonds 1, Applied Sciences 2, and VHB 3.
All right. So all three, A, B, and C. Motions have passed with Jones Edmonds as the number one ranked firm for negotiations.
I think we did it.
Thank you all. We are very privileged to have such talented people in this room, and we've all done great work with you and look forward to continuing our relationships with you. Right. Have an agenda, right?
Yeah.
My computer crashed. All right, agenda item number 2, quarterly financial report and final FY 24 program wide.
This is an updated agenda item that is at your places and it relates to the close of our fiscal year 2024 financials and our final budget for the prior fiscal year. There were a couple of corrections in terms of revenues and expenses of invoices that came in, as I mentioned, and introducing this update during the agenda item changes. Those were relevant to the close of our prior fiscal year, so that's why there's some changes that I want to highlight within the board packet versus what we were presenting as the updated agenda items. Overall revenues are a little bit more than what we anticipated based on some of those last adjustments for the fiscal year. We're a little bit over $3 million in total revenues experienced, which puts us over that, what we originally provided in our approved mid-year budget back in May. On the expense side, we're a little bit under what we projected for the mid-year budget amendment, but still came in about a little bit over $3 million in total expenses for the fiscal year. Which puts us about 88% of what we anticipated under a mid-year budget amendment. Do have a couple of footnotes just to bring to you guys' attention, and these are mainly just to highlight, some of the differences between what we actually observed versus what we budgeted. The first is in-kind revenues. We came in a little bit under what we were projecting. And that's just due to, projects that are, that we were, seeking documentation for to meet our federal match. In the prior fiscal year, we're not, we didn't receive that documentation, so it just roll into next fiscal year. The other footnote related to revenues is that our interest and other revenues are a little bit higher than what we originally anticipated. That's good news. We actually have more interest revenue coming into the program that we put forth towards Bay Mini Grant programs and or the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund or our program operations. This is kind of an uptick we've been seeing over the last several years where we're getting more private donations coming in directly to our program. On the expense side, I just wanted to highlight that under volunteer services, we came in a little bit higher than what we anticipated in our overall budget for prior fiscal year. That's due to additional sponsorships that we're helping out partners related to the scalp search and providing some T-shirts for that event, as well as some food costs related to National Estuaries Week in September that rolled into some of those higher costs than what we anticipated. The last footnote just to mention is that our technical and comms contract consultant services support came in at a little bit over 1.5 million. We were projecting about 1.9 million in total activity in the prior fiscal year. And again, due to project delays or other circumstances, a lot of those expenses weren't realized in the prior fiscal year and will roll into this fiscal year or later. So those expenses aren't going away. We're just, it's basically the timing of when we're recognizing it. So as I mentioned, in total, we're a little bit over 3 million on both the revenue and expenses side. A little bit higher in terms of total revenues, a little bit lower in terms of total expenses, but overall, a pretty robust year of activity, and pretty close to what we projected in terms of a mid-year budget amendment that was passed today. With that, I'll entertain any questions. The last point I just want to make is that this becomes the basis for our annual program-wide audit that we'll pass on to the auditors, and we'll begin towards the tail end in November, and we'll bring back to the boards at the February board meeting the results of that audit. That will entertain any questions you might have on our fiscal year 2024 Q4 financials.
Anybody have any questions for Ed? Right, seeing none, action is to recommend the policy board accept the quarterly financial report and adopt the FY 24 program-wide budget. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Any additional discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6, the FY 25 legislative priorities.
This is another agenda item I typically bring to the November board meetings, and it's basically outlining some of the talking points that I'll bring to both our state and federal elected officials from our local delegation as I meet with them over the course of the day. Oh, sorry. Pull down. This is on page 12 of the packet agenda. And this is something we typically bring to the boards at the November board meeting so that you all have input to the talking points that I will raise to our state and federally elected officials. A lot of the items are similar to what we had on our legislative priorities last year, but with a couple exceptions that I just wanted to highlight. We've been working very closely with the University of South Florida College of Marine Science. They've established a real-time monitoring network primarily in middle to lower Tampa Bay. We've been working to find additional support to expand that network into other areas of Tampa Bay as well as into the upper Bay segments. Right now, we're working with them on a grant application EPA to kind of support the ongoing maintenance of the existing network as well as try to expand it. So this is one of our big priorities, especially in the face of some of the hurricanes that we saw. This real-time monitoring network will allow us to understand sort of the water quality conditions on basically 15-minute intervals in the bay. That's something that our our estuary has lagged behind other estuaries in the state. Indian River Lagoon, the Caloosahatchee River has a real-time monitoring network in place for quite some time now. We're one of the largest estuaries in the state that does not have that current capability. So this has become a high priority for us to continue to support that. We're actually at the last board meeting, I mentioned that we're set to receive some funding from DEP in response to litigation between them and a third party related to Piney Point. We're going to provide some additional funding for equipment to expand it to Bishop Harbor, a new real-time monitoring station there. So again, that's one of our high priorities this year, especially in the face of a lot of the hurricanes, to really understand in real time how the bay is responding to events like hurricanes and just in general, our water quality conditions in between the ambient monitoring that is currently conducted by each of the counties in the bay proper. The other thing just to highlight, it's not a new one, but I just want to emphasize, we recognize, the impacts to the entire Tampa Bay community that we suffered as a result of Debbie, Helene, and Milton this past year. And we want to hear from you all in terms of specific priorities for stormwater and/or wastewater infrastructure that was either impacted by the storm events or has been on the docket in terms of repairing some of the aging infrastructure related to both stormwater and wastewater in the region. So we want to raise that as a sort of a next priority as well for our elected officials and want to provide that partner support as much as possible to echo messages you might be making to those elected officials as really significant needs for our region. I think we definitely saw some vulnerabilities in terms of that infrastructure, and there's a lot of work to be done to improve it in the future to respond to the potential new normal of seeing 12 to 18-inch rainfall events if they become more typical every couple of years in our region. So those are some of the main points I wanted to kind of talk about in terms of the how we communicate priorities to our state elected officials, but also important to us as a national estuary program on the federal side. As a national estuary program that's administered under EPA, we are actually coming under reauthorization through Congress. And what authorization of a program means is that it gives a little bit more validity for Congress to actually make appropriations to those programs. Our authorization runs to federal fiscal year 2026. So we want to, start that process of working with our congressional delegation to remind them of the importance of the work we're doing as a collective national estuary program, in particular our program in Tampa Bay, and the importance of reauthorizing that program for fiscal year 2027 and beyond. Aside from that, we're going to continue to emphasize and work with some of the federal agencies on developing the Little Manatee River Wild and Scenic River plan to hopefully seek that designation for the river in the future. And that's another federal priority that we'll bring to our federally elected officials in the future as well. That's real high level overview, some of the legislative priorities that, again, I will use as talking points, be happy to entertain others. And as I mentioned, we want to hear ideas from folks on sort of the wastewater and stormwater needs that we could advance to those elected officials as well.
I've been on a few calls with state as far as funding, disaster funding. And they have alluded to the fact that a lot of the priorities with disaster funding is going to go to individual residents. The priorities for infrastructure for municipalities is going to be farther down on the priority list as far as funding. And when we get that disaster funding, I don't know. I mean, that was just what they've alluded to on several of those phone calls. And so I understand that a lot of people lost everything, but at the same time, those infrastructure projects help everybody as well. It's not just, some of the things that were said made it seem like, oh, we need to rebuild back everybody's house and elevate everybody's stuff. And it's just those infrastructure projects protect us as well. And so I just want to make sure that they don't kind of across the board, just say these are not going to be as high a priority as some of the other things.
Yeah, definitely hear you. And I think that has been a standing talking point of the SRA program. Especially that's why we're moving forward with some of the projects we just heard consultants provide proposals for. Definitely want to echo that and be another voice to both our state and federally elected officials that those investments are important for the overall well-being of our region now and in the future. Yeah, thank you. Did you want to say something?
I was just gonna say that we're also offering to different lines of funding so that, you know, if those disaster program funding programs are focused on individuals and you're not as competitive there, then we're able to open up access to other districts.
And we have a, you know, as part of the post-disaster recovery process in Pinellas County, we have an infrastructure working group, with all the, you know, cities and some private entities as well, hospitals and things like that. And, you know, one of the things that has come up, we're working on the phase 2 of our vulnerability assessment, and we're helping 10 of the cities do theirs for the first time, smaller cities, providing them technical support to do that. And just reiterating now, if you have yours, but something got critically damaged and it's not in your plan, that you're not eligible for state resiliency funding. So now is the time to kind of look at that if you need to do an update. You know, I've been, you know, on all these calls talking with folks and just saying, you know, we are literally doing yours now, looking at the sensitivity analysis, looking at all of that. And, you know, this is the moment to make sure that your critical infrastructure is in your plan. Otherwise, you're, you know, you want to submit for a project to the state. And if it's not in your plan, that's not eligible. And that came up this last year multiple times, where projects were vetoed by the governor, with the statement that there are other revenue streams for those types of projects, which I totally understand. And then those folks, you know, when they called the state and asked, they're like, well, but that's not in your plan. And so it's a huge gap in understanding. I think folks need to, you know, again, if they're planning on having a lot of money available through that program. So, but if your particular project is not in your plan and it's not reflected in there and it hasn't been analyzed, it won't even be eligible. So make sure you've dotted that I and crossed that T. Any other discussion?
This is an action item, so motion.
Right, so recommend the policy board approve the fiscal year 25 Florida Estuaries Alliance and Tampa Bay Estuary Program legislative priorities. Do we have a motion? So moved. Do we have a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, legal services contractor. Ed.
Yeah, as I briefed the boards at the last board meeting, our longtime counsel, Don Kahn, will be retiring at the end of this month. We are very sad to see him go. He's provided a tremendous amount of service to our program, as well as the Regional Planning Council for quite some time, even before my tenure at the program. Very much valued Don's service, and we're now looking at a sort of changing of the guard. As was recommended by the policy board, we actually asked for letters of interest for legal services for the Tampa Bay Estuary Program between August 19th and September 20th. We only received one letter of interest from Gray Robinson, in particular Jan McLean. He's currently working with the Sarasota Bay Estuary Program. I was actually in a conversation with Jan prior to us advertising, and it was good to see her submit a letter of interest. So with that sort of recommendation, we have a draft agreement for the board's consideration to move forward with Ray Robinson as the legal services contractor for the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. over the December 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2026 timeframe. The second part of the action is to recommend consideration of 3 additional annual cycles to extend that contract. So in total, if we're happy with the services and the board agrees with continuing with them, it would be over a 5-year life cycle. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. I know Jan is actually on the Zoom as well. If you have any particular questions with Jan, but Jan's been a long time member of the Management Consortium. She has been counsel for the city of Tampa, is very familiar with our program. So I have enough confidence that you'll be performing the work that we need with those professionalism. So, yeah.
Since Don decided to quit on us.
Oh.
The Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, last Monday also voted to have Jan represent us going forward. So, she comes highly recommended. Lots of experience in our arena. So, for what it's worth, I'm very happy to have her on board if we have to lose this guy.
Any additional questions for Ed? All right, we'll take both actions at once if everyone's good with that. So recommending the policy board authorize the executive director to enter into a new legal services agreement with Ray Robinson for the period of December 1st, 2024 through December 26th, and to also authorize the executive director to extend and amend the contract term to 3 additional cycles after the initial term upon annual approval by the policy board. All right. Do I have a motion? Moved. Do I have a second? Second. Any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, and congratulations, Ron, on a well-deserved.
Well, thank you. It's been a real privilege to work with the program since 2009. It's hard to believe it's been that long. It just seems like yesterday that I started meeting with staff and Holly at the time and working with the program. So it's been a real privilege, and I know you're going to be very well served by Jan. She's going to do a real good job for you.
Thank you for your service, and
Thank you.
I hope you have a really great trip planned here. You deserve it. All right, agenda item 8, the 2025 Bay Mini Grant Projects. Jessica.
So as a reminder, Bay Mini grants are,
We go to the corner.
There is that for me to try.
So I'm.
So the Bay Mini Grant Program is a competitive grant program that we administer. It's funded by sales of the Tarpon Tag license plate. We distribute the funds to the community for education and restoration projects that support the TBET priorities. Schools, businesses, nonprofits, and governments are eligible. And before I give you an update on what we decided on this year, I'm gonna let Megan say a few words about our process this year.
I'm part of the review team, and I just wanted to give a little narrative before you look at all these numbers. The review process really presented a lot of exciting and eligible projects that we're going to recommend to you all. There were about 25 CAC members involved in the review process, and the discussion was enthusiastic, and everyone was really well informed. I'm excited to be a part of the process, which went really smoothly, even though we had to pivot a couple times due to the consecutive storms. And as a group, we felt that the updates to the scoring rubric and packet gave us, the reviewers, plenty of information to grade each of the projects equitably. So we're excited to.
Thank you. So we did receive 31 eligible applications that totaled over $140,000. That's on that list. They're all on this list here. The Community Advisory Committee formed the basis of the review team that checks out scores and ranks their desire to fund each project. And as Megan said, we had a pretty big group this year. Their input is the basis of the recommendations in front of you today. So together, we have recommended funding 22 projects totaling $98,800 in funding. The ones that are recommended for funding this year include environmental improvement projects like installing native plants or oyster habitat, and education projects that range from bringing students out into our watershed, into our native habitats, to art installations, and even teaching early career communications professionals how to highlight environmental problems and solutions in our watershed. So I'm really excited about the group of projects that we have this year. We did target for funding priorities this year. We had specific audiences, which is a little bit different than we've done in the past. Instead of like specific types of project, we want to work with specific audiences. So this year, businesses, underserved and overburdened communities, indigenous communities, veterans, and school groundskeeping staff were targeted audiences. And it seems like we did have some success with that tactic, because we ultimately are awarding, depending on how you count which community they're from, about 8 projects that fall within one of those funding priority target audiences this year. So I think that's pretty cool. For the projects that were not recommended for funding this year, we'll be providing detailed feedback to them and hopefully having them return an application next year that's even stronger and more well put together. So just because it's not recommended for funding this year doesn't mean we won't see it again next year, potentially on the funded side. Any questions about the process or projects or list in front of you today? Yeah.
Let's see that you're also targeting beer drinkers.
Diverse audience, right?
I highly recommend that. That makes obvious.
Nice.
Had 4 TDP employees. So that was probably part of the rationale.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
We like to be social. Any other questions? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So the action recommended is to recommend the policy board approve funding of Bay Mini grants based on the findings of the Community Advisory Committee and Executive Director recommendations. We have a motion? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Sorry, who was the second?
Sir.
All right, Executive Director and staff reports, Ed and your program staff.
Yeah, page 19 or 17, I just want to give you some updates and again reiterate my thanks for Don Kahn serving as longtime legal counsel for the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. We're going to be honoring you next week as well, so we're expecting you to show up at the policy board as well to accept these congratulations of your retirement.
I'll definitely be there.
As I mentioned during the financial report, the audit will begin at the conclusion and acceptance of the final fiscal year 2024 Q4 final budget at the policy board next week. That will be the basis for our program-wide audit that we'll bring back to the board at February for your consideration and finalization. Oh, yeah. Thank you for reminding me.
Trying to get your attention gracefully.
So within the packet, the auditor actually provided a review schedule, but the brunt of this work is going to come at the tail end of November and into December for a final presentation at the February board meeting. Also wanted to highlight that we have a couple of novel events coming up. The hackathon that we've been developing at the Tampa Bay or the Tampa River Center is sort of the brainchild of some of our data scientists and our open science gurus at the Estuary Program. This will basically be asking for folks to come help us develop coding and dashboards for new indicators that might have monitoring data associated with them, but have not yet been synthesized. We're holding that novel event, like I said, over a day long to develop codes that would benefit us as an estuary program and then be implemented hopefully through some sort of contract that those folks would be eligible to potentially receive at the conclusion of the hackathon. The registration is currently open and Mark, just you want to say?
Yeah, we've been planning this event for the last couple of months. Registration went live this Monday. So please spread the word about this. Staff you have or yourself that may be interested. Seems like everybody that has interest in these types of topics of, developing workflows or concepts around reporting of various indicators around health and then environmental to social structure. That. So as of Monday, we only have about 5 registrants. So we have capacity to 20 attendees. So please spread the word. Go on our website and see all the information about that. /activate. It's all there. It's pretty cool graphics. Good hack. The hack. Hack.
And just to point out real quick, the time is wrong on the agenda. Sure, not 8
Thank you, guys. I'll skip the hurricane update for now, but I just wanted to mention Terry Flaherty, Walia, as well as Dr. Blake Simmons successfully put together a grant application to the Gulf Ecosystem Initiative that's being advertised through the National Center for Ecological Analysis and Synthesis by the University of California at Santa Barbara. This is a working group that some of the estuary program staff has been involved with in the past. So we're really good, really happy to see that we're going to continue to work with the NC's group to really understand the benefits of restoration to fish populations throughout the state of Florida. So Carrie and Blake assembled a multidisciplinary team of fisheries biologists, social scientists, as well as other researchers interested in this topic area, and hope to make some advancements and really give an idea of what sort of projects are bringing the biggest bang for the buck in terms of fisheries that are important to our state's economy as well as the environment. Last thing to kind of talk about in terms of my executive director updates is, I mentioned it before, recognize that the region is continuing to recover from pretty significant storm events of Debbie, Helene, and Milton. We've worked initially with the University of Florida to do some enhanced monitoring right after Milton, and also working with the counties to have their ambient monitoring programs to understand sort of the water quality that resulted from those pretty significant rainfall events. Luckily, after Milton, I would have to say the water quality wasn't as bad as we were kind of expecting. The bacterial levels were a little bit higher. That's kind of to be expected with a lot of stormwater runoff. But there's ongoing analyses being conducted by the University of Florida group as well as other university researchers to understand sort of whether or not there's human health implications to those events in terms of bacteria that might be harmful to folks recreating in the bay. So that's sort of a effort that we try to coordinate with not only University of Florida, but the other estuary programs in Southwest Florida, Sarasota Bay and Coastal and Heartland Estuary Program. Sheila's been doing a great job of trying to coordinate with each of the municipality, county governments, staff to understand where there's still gaps in terms of cleanup efforts, particularly in public spaces. We've already held a couple of cleanup events at Boyd Hill, E.G. Simmons, and Robinson Preserve this past week. We have a couple other ones coming up, but if your entity has a need for volunteers to help out with continued debris cleanup, particularly in the park system, so we could get people out there, getting out in nature and getting their minds off of sort of the devastation that occurred over this past storm season. We certainly want to offer that level of support to our partners. So please reach out to our staff and Sheila in particular to set up those events in the future. Have a couple more scheduled into November and December of this year. Only other thing I wanted to mention before I turn it over to Jessica has one update as well, is that a lot of our staff are going to be going up to Stony Brook University in Long Island for a joint Association National Estuary Program Fall Tech Transfer Meeting. A number of us will be presenting up there next week, so it's another way we've been sort of spreading the message of the work that we're doing in Tampa Bay with a lot of our sister programs involved with the National Estuary Programs, and continue to relay our science and management outcomes to provide lesson learns for other programs throughout the nation. And then last but not least, Jessica had a request related to her Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund call that will be coming out in the early calendar year.
Right, so the TBER program, Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund, I think most of y'all are pretty familiar with that, but there's a little handout at your spot there if you want to take that with you. Each year we select funding priorities to try to steer the funding and steer the work in the region toward either chronic or emerging issues that y'all see here in the watershed. Since y'all are the practitioners and many of you are contributors. Fun. I'm just here to ask you if you have any input on funding priorities for the RFP that's going to be released in January. So if you have any input you'd like to provide now, please do, or you can also reach out to me afterward. I'm expecting them, but not talking.
That was it.
All right, the Technical Advisory Committee report is in your packet and includes some new technical reports, open science products, presentations. Of course, the estuary program coordinated, our annual seagrass transect monitoring training, as well as attended some committee meetings. The new meeting schedule, I'm sure, will be coming out very soon. Haven't seen the email yet, Marcus, but I'm sure it's coming. It's coming. All right, so for the new meeting, so that we can get them on everybody's calendar before your calendars get too full. As you were talking about debris, I just wanted to throw this out there. It's just, the state has a statewide contractor for debris cleanup in the entire Tampa Bay watershed. And we do have the link to that. I can send it out. I think, if we all get it out there, because that contractor is not going to be here forever. But they are out there cleaning up all of the marine debris from the hurricanes and disposing of it. So there's a portal where you can report both the debris as well as vessels, derelict vessels that have ended up where they're not supposed to be, and they're handling all of that. We have a point person for Pinellas who's kind of herding cats, if you will, for us, but this is the entire area, so, and all the way down into Manatee County. So we should be encouraging boaters and folks who are out there fishing and out there on the water to report this stuff, get this opportunity to get this debris out of the water.
You mentioned that it's a short period of time, potentially. Is it span the life of when the emergency declarations stay in place, then sometime after?
Yeah, they haven't said when they're gonna stop, at least on our meetings, but
You provide those details for
yep, absolutely. There's also, the state is also manning a watch line, 7 days a week from 8 to 5. So if somebody, doesn't want to put it in the portal, they can just call. But it is helping the contractor prioritize where they need to go. So versus.
You also have the water keepers for the control program. And one of the builders.
Yeah. So we really need help getting the word out. I'm not sure why it hasn't gotten the media attention that I think it should. So we're getting tons of complaints about it.
Is that, that's not in here, is it information on how?
Yeah, no, it's just, I was bringing it up since we were talking about debris, but I'll send it out. And do you have a question?
Yeah, Kelly, I just wanted to make a comment, and I'm not casting aspersions. I think the counties have done an amazing job, but in a lot of areas, especially in my neighborhood, Apollo Beach, we have a lot of homes inundated during Helene. I just wanted to point out that the counties have done a really good job of coming and collecting debris on the right of ways. But what they're doing is they're leaving a lot of small material behind. And there are a lot of folks that either don't have the means or the willingness to kind of take the time. A lot of that stuff's gonna end up in Tampa Bay if we don't get on top of it. So just asking if there's any resources at the county level for them to go back. Somebody just look at the quality of work that's been done by some of the contractors that are doing the large debris removal. You know, it continues to be an issue. I know in our neighborhood, we've been pulling people together on the weekends and just driving right-of-ways and trying to rake and get as much of that stuff up as we can, but it continues to kind of be a challenge.
Yeah. 5 days a week, I sit on a debris management call every morning, except for this morning. Thank you. And it's mostly around the DOTs and their efforts out there, but I would say it's a challenge for every single community. A lot of us, I mean, most of us are reliant on contractors. I will say at the for Pinellas County, we put in missions for additional help with that after cleanup, we'll call it. And we received 6 additional Vector crews and street sweeping support. So what we're doing is within our service area, we're going in after what we call first pass is done, which is most of the initial big debris, and we're at least street sweeping what ended up on the road, and then after second pass, we're factoring out the stormwater system and then sweeping again. So I would encourage, your city, your county to request those resources if you haven't. They've been great, but it is a challenge. And as somebody who's overseeing debris management, I will just say that, for somebody who's really creative and has that skill set, there is money to be made on designing a good tool for debris pickup, because we're using equipment that are typically used for like trees, the grapple, and I can tell you what it does to drywall. It just blows the drywall up, right? It's really good for mattresses. It's not good for drywall. It's not good for little stuff. So yeah, it is. It's like hand raking and all that, and that's very labor intensive. So we are doing a lot of education outreach about, with our communities. And hanging, we put flyers in these little plastic bags that go on their doorknobs and ask them to please be that final cleanup at the very end, because it's too much for any local government alone to do it. So it's going to take a village. So maybe there's some messaging that could come out of this somewhere.
Certain time frame, big stuff.
Yes. Yeah, we've got 90 days.
Eligible for reimbursement.
Yeah, I think they've done a really good job of getting the big stuff up. There was a big push between Helene and Milton to try and get a lot of the big debris out so it didn't become a projectile during the storm. But it's exactly what you're talking about, Kelly. It's after the big stuff, and they're using pickers and it's breaking things up, and then you get the crews coming in and mowing right of ways, and now continues to be a challenge.
Yeah. I hear you.
Brakes and magnets.
I hear you. Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard I asked at the county level if, obviously we don't ever want to have to deal with this again, but I think debris management should have to rotate to other people. Other departments, not Kelly. I think it's a really good experience, and it's an experience. Just say that. So anyway, but
you got the red tie cleanup merit badge.
yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Need a new sash thing.
And I also did want to say, since I know that, a lot of people in this area like Fort DeSoto, I know nobody's been in there, but I have, and it is incredibly damaged. So, we are getting you know, the Parks Department asked us to, Public Works to help them get in there. And, so it's going to be, a while. St. Petersburg, we have a lot of your trash cans. Buried out there, kid you not, City of St. Petersburg, those big trash cans and recycle bins are all over Fort DeSoto. There are pieces of houses at Fort DeSoto, washed in from we don't know where. There are gopher tortoises that were moved from other locations into Fort DeSoto. Like they swam, came in by waves. There is a massive population of gopher tortoises out there right now.
Talk to Jeff, that's like. Well, I mentioned it.
So anyway, we are working to bring in some specialized equipment to start digging that stuff out. Archaeological resources have been uncovered that we have to get permission to recover up in an appropriate way. And we'll probably be burning out there as well. So we'll make sure that people don't get into a panic that we're burning down Fort DeSoto, but there's not going to be any way for us to get the vegetative debris out of there. So we're going to have to burn. So just, yeah.
Like organizations like the Friends of Fort DeSoto, are they providing any funding to help with your process, or are they able to provide any funding?
Nobody's allowed in the park right now, but they've been helping the rangers and stuff that have been working out there tirelessly. It's just gotten to the point now where they need big stuff, big equipment. You know, part of the roadway is gone, so we're gonna have to rebuild that. So it's gonna take a minute or two or three. And obviously you've seen the boat, if you're out on a boat, you've seen the boating facilities. And so that park is just, it's gonna be a while. And I hope people can be a little patient. There's been a lot of negativity on Facebook lately about sending emails to the commissioners demanding that Fort DeSoto be reopened. It can't be, it is not safe. And there's a lot of damage out there what we have to deal with. So, but when it gets to the point where we can safely have volunteers in there, I'm gonna talk to Paul Causey about having an event there, because I know people want back in, and it would be really great if people were willing to come in and help with some of the final touches.
So we talked to Parks, they initially said, John Chestnut, this is where they're probably ready first.
Yeah, well, there are so many trees down in Lake Seminole Park that we're gonna have to cut our way through. So yeah, our parks were hit really hard.
I haven't visited the site, but you guys have been able to utilize Maximum Park. Yeah, Uplands Maximum Park. Great.
DOT has been, that's DOT, yeah. They've been using Maximo and another site, so. Yeah, I just wanted to share that because I know the patience is growing thin down there, and for that area, they're just gonna have to wait. Yeah. All right. Community Advisory Committee report, Megan.
Order, we got two community applications are volunteers, total 38 hours, which is still good considering the source. 7 great events, posted before the storm. There'll be some more doing after, and next year. That's it.
Any questions for Megan? Information items, additional packet information, quarterly progress reports at board. Maya.
There's a link to our Smart Sheets dashboard, and we can dive deeper into each individual project. If you have questions or curious about all of the different work that we have going on, help as always, you can reach out to me and I can walk you through it. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 14th here at the Regional Planning Council. And Kelly, I was just gonna add that in addition to the CRAS transect training, all of the transects have been monitored this year and the data is up in the CRAS transect dashboard, which we're hopeful that the Water Management District will be able to use in their ground truthing assessment for the maps, which are expected to happen next year.
Just out of curiosity, for those that were out in the bay, did you guys see a lot of vegetative debris? Oh, well, that is something that the state will clean up too, by the way.
But it's like confetti. It's so tiny.
Yes.
You couldn't get it. It's the stuff Tina was talking about.
Well, we have mass eelgrass all over Lake Tarpon.
Yeah.
People are screaming about, so the state's gonna do that, but I did want to say they do vegetative debris as well, but I'm just curious. I know we've been out and just the Helene was such a massive washover event. We ended up with sandbars where we've never had sandbars and massive, I mean, there's a huge area around Fort DeSoto that was open water that's now sand. And I'm just curious as to what the rest of the bay looked like with regard to sediment movements.
We only went to a few spots because you all did such an excellent job covering your transects this year. We went to a site on the North Shore and I don't think it looked like a whole lot of sand movement. Over in Hillsborough County, kind of in the kitchen area by Bullfrog Creek, I think that's where we saw the most sand movement. It looked like so there were some areas where rhizomes were exposed, and then there were also just like maybe if there was grass, it was totally covered up. And I've heard reports from different anglers that bullfrog in particular is areas that used to be about 3 feet deep are now less than a foot deep. So quite a bit of sediment movement in that area. I've been out on the sailboat. There's the bottom's different. You know. So I think people just need to be cautious and be prepared when they are out there. It's different. It's different.
Certainly a lot of ETOMs that were impacted in navigation. Then we were out doing some seagrass surveys, and saw the Coast Guard out there repairing some of those. So, but be cautious. Yeah.
As far as seagrass goes, though, for transect monitoring this year, I don't know how many transects were done pretty close storms, but overall, based on my impression of what I looked at on the dashboards, the seagrasses have improved slightly from last year. Every bay segment except for the Tampa Bay has slight uptake. Overall frequency on small species. Old Tampa Bay had slight decline, and that's mostly loss of health. Last year had a slight uptake. So as far as I can tell, it's mostly same and similar as what it was last year, but it's not the same. So we're gonna get the district first estimates of coverage from 2020. We should be getting those soon.
They'll come out early next calendar year. We're expecting kind of March timeframe, but we'll have some drafts here probably in the next month or so, maybe early January. And those were flown pre-storm, so we won't know the damages. We won't fly again for another, now it'll be maybe a year, a little over a year. So that, and whatever storms happen between now and then too, you know, we'll see those damages at that time. So these images were captured pre Debbie, Helene, Milton. So we were hoping to see some recovery. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, that looks what you're seeing on the ground too. But those numbers are going to be pre-storm kind of asterisk. And they were all also flown a little bit later, which could show some recovery. That maybe just a factor of flying a little bit later because of the weather conditions forced us. We couldn't fly as early. It's too windy and other factors, but. So this is going to be another little asterisk. I feel every year there's yeah, there's always some caveats. But we do work with the partners, obviously, what those transects that the ESHRE program, we were so critical to also in conjunction with those maps. So, and this year we did both the Sun Coast and the Springs Coast. So we're hoping to see some stabilization up there as well, with some trend indicators.
Almost all the transects, maybe like 5 or 6 were done before the hurricanes. So after Debbie, but before And all of the organizations are doing a really awesome job characterizing the different macroalgae that you're seeing. And so Marcus has added that as another SAP species that you can turn on and off on your Transect dashboard. So that's pretty interesting. I know some folks are seeing filamentous green algae, Chaetomorpha, up in Tampa Bay. We're still seeing Davis, Lingvia lake species all over the area. So just major thanks to all your field staff who've been documenting the different macroalgae that we've seen.
And I just want to add one other thing, thanks, that reminded me. So some of the field verification that we typically do with when we fly these was not able to be done because it was post Helene and post Milton. So all of those, that sand shifting, if we went out and looked at the area today, would not be indicative of what was flown. So we're just gonna have to take the maps as they are, but working in conjunction with those transects, I think helps clarify some of those areas and sitting down with the local partners that are familiar to say, does this make sense? Here's an area we're gonna circle to say, is this what you would have seen prior to the storm? So again, just, you know, we're looking for the long-term trend with these mapping efforts. And I think that's what we'll see. And obviously with these maps, you know, we'll point those things out as we can. And one other, talking about the sand, you know, in Sarasota Bay, Midnight Pass opened back up, which they were discussing anyway, and the storms did it for them, made the decision. But there was another pass that opened up, I think it's called Milton Pass now. And so, you know, just thinking about the magnitude of the storms, and kind of to your point, Kelly, is that massive sand shifts and changing, you know, opening up Midnight Pass is going to change, you know, that estuary area and that flushing of it, and it's going to change the species that are able to survive there. So there's going to be massive shifts after these storms for sure.
Any other items that anyone wants to share or bring up?
Just last but not least, but we are keeping an eye on the red tide that is out off the coast. Hoping that, you know, after this big stormwater glut that goes out into the near coastal environment, after that is processed, that we'll see a diminishing of red tide over the winter. So keep your fingers crossed that occurs.
I think we've ground truth that whole patch is off East Caribbean there. So
Yeah.
There's
And
been
we keep our fingers.
I think Kate reported it's been a mix of algae species, a lot of diatoms as well, and different Karenia species, a couple different Karenia species observed.
We're trying to keep the media off, don't worry.
Yeah.
We're trying to say, it's okay, we'll let you know.
I don't need to go from debris to fish. It's just, that's why I'm, you know, pretending it's, I'm pretending, I'm in denial mode.
Earmuff.
so.
We're dealing with the challenges from you.
Yeah, so anyway, and I will say, it won't show up in any reports or anything, but we had a big slug of water enter Wilkesika Bay because we lost the weir at Lake Seminole. So that happened during Helene, so but really, so you know, if you just, it's a social science project too. If you're like watching all the comments on, I mean, there are thousands of comments about it, and there's about a good chunk of them that think we should just tear it out and let it go back to what it was before in the 1940s, when somebody thought making a lake was a good thing. And then there's, you know, the other side of the coin. So this has been very interesting watching the feedback, at least. But yeah, really sorry about that. Contributing to the algae soup, as I call it. So, all right. With that, we'll adjourn the meeting and have wonderful holiday, and let's get through the end of this month with no more storms.